Now, I'm using the Strange But True stories as a background, and I would be sending this to Steve White, who makes these wonderful programs. Basically, to start off my story, these things occurred in 1970s. I'm going to tell two stories first to lead up to my own. One of them is I had a very, very good friend who has his mother is German and father is Yugoslav. Anyway, they live. We all lived in a suburb called Hallam, which was southeastern of Melbourne. Let's put it this way, in Australia. And what had happened to her was that she was in the middle of the day standing in her lounge room in Hallam and just glancing out, as it were, towards the front garden. Then all of a sudden her mother, who had been living, of course, all this time in Germany, suddenly appeared in the front garden. Extremely clear and shocking because, well, this lady I'm talking about, Ingrid, saw her as clear as day, standing in the garden and then fading away to nothing. Shortly afterwards, she got a phone call from Germany, and that confirmed that her mother, in fact, had died that day, or perhaps it was the late at night previous day. Which just shows that ghosts are real, and this lady in the middle of the day had seen her mother standing in a place that was absolutely impossible for her to be. Anyhow, that's the first short story, but the second one involves a couple of people that I knew very well, and I was actually their landlord, you might say. I had a unit, and they had a two-bedroom house attached in Leichhardt in Sydney in the late 1970s. And they had a couple of pet cats, black and white cats, that had died, and as I understand, were actually may have been buried in the backyard of that particular place. Anyhow, the place was quite shut, all the windows, all the doors, everything was locked and everything for the night. Early in the morning, suddenly, out of the one bedroom they joined the next one, in other words, then you went into the lounge and the kitchen, with two cats running across the floor and skidding, as it were, where you could hear their claws and feet and everything skidding around the corner and running into the lounge and disappearing. Well, of course, this shocked my friend, or both of them. They then got up and raced into that lounge and the kitchen, and there was no possibility of the animals, had they even been there, escaping again. And of course they realised these animals had been long dead. So how could the ghost of the two animals come running past them in their house? Well, that was a strange story in itself, but now I'll get on to what happened to me. And this is why I got such an interest in watching Strange But True stories and things like The Twilight Zone and, of course, Outer Limits and other programs of that nature. Back in the 70s, I had the friend that I've known for a very long time that I told you about with the mother had this episode. He was studying to be a doctor. Anyhow, what had happened, we were, as kids, not to disturb my father, who worked a late afternoon shift. It was like 4 p.m. in the afternoon and finished, I think, 1 o'clock in the morning. He would come home, make up a little chocolate drink and relax for a few minutes, and then put the light on and go to his room and go to bed. Well, we weren't to disturb him, but my brother and I shared the same bedroom, and he was asleep and I was still laying there awake, and suddenly I heard my father coming. The car would come in the driveway, and there was a large sheet of metal that was covering an area that was being repaired, I guess, was the best way to put it. Then I heard him going in the door, the front door. A couple of heavy steel-cap-toed shoes were clonked down on the side table, and the door in the kitchen would open and he'd go in the kitchen. Well, then I was laying awake and thinking, oh, well, Dad's home, and I'll just lay awake here and wait for him to go and go back to bed. Well, then I was waiting for a few minutes, and I thought, this is very strange. Maybe he's had a seizure or something, a heart attack or something. So I got out of bed. I was laying awake, actually, but as I said, I got out. I went into the passage. It was all complete pitch black. I opened the door to the kitchen. It was pitch black as well. I thought, wow. The passage light had not been put on, and there was no sound or any further, and there was no light any further, and I shut the door and went back and laid in the bed. Sure enough, about, I'd say, 15 minutes later, the car came into the driveway, went over the metal area, as I said, that's put there for repairs. I heard the front door, my father even clearing his throat, and dropped and clonked down his shoes. I went into the kitchen, turned the light on. You could see that a little bit even under the door. Had his few minutes of relaxation and a hot Milo, as we would drink in those days. The light went on in the passage. He went down the passage. The light went off again and he went to bed. Well, he often slept in quite a bit later than my mother would, and anyway, I got up in the morning and my mother came out of the bedroom, and before I could even open my mouth about this, she said, "Did you hear what happened last night, those sounds?" I said, yes, that Dad had come home, and then nothingness, and sure enough, 15 minutes later, the real sounds of him coming home and going to bed. Well, this was dumbfounding, and it was impossible to deny that it happened, and we were totally stunned by the event. I asked my friend Peter that during his medical studies, he said the only thing I could come up with is that we've heard incidents like this before, and we think that people have got such powerful minds that they can more or less project themselves from where they are to where they want to be, and then they wouldn't literally be there in the true physical sense, but this is what apparently happened. He appeared, then of course a few minutes later, maybe 2 or 3 minutes later, disappeared. And then, as I said, about 15 minutes after that, he came into the driveway for real and went to bed. To me, that is a story, and as I said, I got a witness in my mother at the time, that is a story that may well have been the sort of thing that you might have seen on The Twilight Zone, only this actually happened to me. So I thought I'd relay that, and I have other paranormal experiences that I could talk about, but I won't now do so. I've seen ghosts on more than one occasion, and I won't go into the long story about some of those things. Just to simply conclude that this sort of thing is very real, does happen, and that's why I admire and enjoy the true stories, strange but true stories by Steve White. And I have no connection with him other than, as I said, I will put this on his page. And I am not sure, when he read out his email address, there were certain things that might have been written down, or the number might have been there and so on. I didn't take a chance with that. Anyhow, I just hope that all concerned enjoy the story, and I'd be very I'd welcome any comments or questions or discussion on it. No, any civil and polite comments would be very welcome. So thank you for viewing.